Good morning, Jason from Vietnam. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you, Ha. It's great to be with you today and being able to share some of my journey. And I'm coming from Australia today, from Melbourne.
Hmm. Thank you so much for spending your. Now it's your lunchtime already, right? So your afternoon.
Just about to be.
Just about a bit. Okay, so thank you for spending your early afternoon with us and sharing your story. We really admire the journey that you've been having and all the things that you do. So a lot of audience say, okay, we want to bring Jason onto the show and for him to share his journey. So thank you so much for accepting and coming and sharing your, the journey with us. Okay.
It's a great honor. Thank you so much for having me on.
Jason, can you do me a huge favor? Can you please introduce who you are and what you've been doing for us to have the rough understanding of what your journey first?
Sure. I'm Jason S. Bradshaw, and I started my very first business at the age of 14, selling a range of telecommunication equipment and computer supplies. And when I was interviewed at 14 years of age, I said that I couldn't compete on price, but I could compete on the service that I delivered. Roll forward many years, I'm a long way from 14 now. Roll forward many years, and I've built a career around the experiences that I help teams and organizations deliver, transforming organizations to really build lifetime loyalty from their customers. It led me to write a book called It's All About Sex, that's CEX, The Essential Guide to Customer Employee Experience. And in the book, I talk about a whole range of activities that I've had the pleasure of leading that have resulted in multi-million dollar sales, multi-million dollars worth of sustained revenue for companies, and of course, a greater share of wallet from customers across the board, as well as improvements from an employee experience point of view. I've worked with many of Australia's leading brands and some of the world's most recognizable brands. So everything from telecommunications to big box retail to companies like Volkswagen Group. And today I am, amongst many things, a consultant, an author, a keynote speaker, but I'm also the Chief Experience and Innovation Officer at carexpert.com.au. And CarExpert is Australia's most loved technology platform for new car buyers. So doing some really exciting stuff there about putting the consumer at the forefront of that new car buying experience, which I think is absolutely essential for someone that's looking to spend so much money on such a significant purchase. So that's me in, I'm going to say 120 seconds or less, but certainly come back to that call. My entire career, no matter the title I've had, whether I've been sitting on a board of a health company, a not-for-profit, or sitting in a boardroom of a big box retailer, or even when I worked in government, every single job, at the heart of it, it's been about transforming the operations with a really strong focus on how that business, that team impacts the employee and the customer.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm gonna bring you back to when you were 14 years old, when you first started your business, okay? And then you say that you're not competing with other companies in terms of price, but you're competing with other companies in terms of experience they're receiving from buying the service
Yeah.
from you. And at the age of 14, it's very young for you to for a regular person to have that kind of competitive mindset in terms of customer service. And I think that back then, if I am it was years ago also, so the terms of customer service were still in the very early stage of it, right? How did that
Yeah.
resonated to you back then?
So we're talking 25 years ago, and it was really the early days where customer service was even as you said, a term that people were using. Customer experience or experience management wasn't even a
Existed
thought
back
process
then,
for
it's
most
not,
people at
right?
that time.
Hmm.
Yeah, so at 14 years of age, unlike many 14-year-olds, I was reading a range of business books. One of the books that I absolutely, to this day, love and cherish and have given to a number of people is a book called In Pursuit of Wow. It's a book by a gentleman by the name of Tom Peters, and in that book, Tom basically takes the reader on a journey of companies not having to be perfect, but they should be trying to find ways to be better through the service, the transaction, the experience, or the experiences that they deliver. And deliver wow moments, if you like. I can remember being inspired by that book and many years later creating a training program called Service That Pops, because that would deliver a wow experience. And so from that 13 years of age, in fact, I was reading books from international best-selling authors like Tom Peters. I was listening to people like Zig Ziglar, who, of course, Zig is very much focused on sales, but sales with a very much a consumer focus on how to sell, as opposed to just close the deal and move on. So, I had been doing a lot of reading from a very early age around different business techniques, and the one that resonated with me was that service. Now, you can always, I think it's a fool's game playing a price game. Look at the airlines out there. Someone brings out a $99 flight, and the next airline brings out $89, and next year you read about the airline making no money. That's not a sustainable business, right? But what is sustainable is selling each and everything you do, whether it be a product or a service, with a decent margin in it, and to a level that people value. Now, people value the experience that gets delivered to them much more than we give them credit for. And at 14, I had just started seeing enough little dots to say, well, the reality is I'm not a big player, so this little thread called service is probably the area I need to focus on.
But you were a new kid on the block, right? And then that, when you go into the market and you compete with other companies using, the service, the quality of experience that you want to promote to your customers, and then weren't you afraid of, the giant companies that they have a lot of money, they have a lot of people, they have a lot of resources that can come in and, smash your business if they want to, duplicate your model, and then they can do it better?
Well, look, the good thing about being a 14-year-old entrepreneur is most people don't give you the time of day, and they definitely don't think you're going to be a threat to them, right? So a lot of people will just write you off in that regard. But the same is true, for a big organization or a big startup company today. Most often the competitors are so focused on their big end-of-town competitors that, you have an opportunity to disrupt before people even realize. You think about Uber, the taxi industry in New York, San Francisco, when Uber first launched, were doing everything they could to say that Uber was not safe transport. It was not going to survive. It was the wrong thing for the citizens. And today, I'm pretty sure most people would agree that Uber won that battle because they found a better way to deliver the experience. Now, nothing against taxi drivers, but for 30 years, they never changed their business model. And someone came along and did it differently. Now, think about airlines. There are people that are absolutely happy to hop on a plane with no frills, no remarkable levels of service, no leg room. Everything's extra. Want a glass of water? Yep, that's an extra couple of dollars. Want some luggage? That's extra money. People are happy for that. But at the same time, you've got people that will only travel at the pointy end of the plane in lush first-class settings. And both organizations can exist in a world and be profitable where they're delivering on their service promise. And so the key is just defining what it is you're going to do, be absolutely resonant in delivering on that, and with that will come, over time, market share. Yeah, as a 14-year-old, I didn't use those words, of course, but when I was talking to someone and offering them my products and services and trying to convince them, the one thing that I could absolutely guarantee was that level of service. I couldn't guarantee to be cheaper. I couldn't guarantee the product would be better. I was reselling other people's products, but I could deliver that level of service and convince them of that by every time, if someone bought some sellotape off me, because I started selling office supplies as well at one point. If someone bought some sellotape off me, I delivered it on time. I made it a really simple experience for them. And then the next time they ordered something, whether it be sellotape or whether it be a computer, again, made sure I delivered on my promise. And over time, they built up the trust. Meanwhile, big end of town has got so much bureaucracy that the service agent goes, oh, sorry, we missed the courier, so it's going to be a day late. it's those little moments that actually add up to big opportunities to disrupt and to provide a better experience that grows to market share.
Totally agree with you. I would want to forward it a little bit from the 14 years old, and then now you've been recognized for 3 consecutive years straight as global gurus on customer and employee experience. We bring you back onto the time that you in university. What did you study back then in the university that strengthened your knowledge and your perspective on the service?
Yeah, so I would say that a university degree is not a necessity to be successful in business. That would be the first thing that I'd say. But I studied commerce and leadership at university, and really very focused on the mechanisms of an organisation. What are from an organisational psychology point of view, what is it that makes an employee tick in the workforce, which is different to how they operate, say, in their personal lives? How does that translate into leadership practice? How does that translate into operating practice? And then looking at the disciplines around organizational structures and product development. But the thing that most people don't understand or don't know is I did my university studies part-time. Because like many people, I went to university fresh out of high school and I was bored. And that's no reflection on the teachers, the professors, but I just didn't find it the most constructive way for me to learn. I'd already had a business at 14 years of age. I was dabbling in other things. So I really just threw myself into corporate Australia and went and worked in the US as well for a little bit. And applied what I was learning at university in real time. So, I could go and have conversations with professors about, you've just said that A, B, and C would never happen in a corporate environment, yet I'm sitting in one of the biggest corporates in Australia and it exactly just happened. And then being able to flesh out the theory in a really practical sense. And so, I think the school of life, the school of actually doing stuff is just as valuable as university. And anyone watching this that hasn't been to university, don't think that's going to hold you back. You determination, willingness to learn, and a willingness to change paths or modify the path when things aren't going right is just as valuable as spending 6 years at a university getting multiple degrees.
Just curious. So, how did you have the access to corporation back then, so that you can apply real time between the theory you studied at university and compare with the real life experience, though?
Well, because I was working a full-time job, and so I would be when I was designing. I'm part of a team designing a restructure. I would be saying, well, at university, they said this is best practice. And then, you'd have that internal debate with your colleagues. And I always prescribed to this notion, and I still to this day prescribe to this. There is no question that you shouldn't ask. So if you're the most senior person in the room or the most junior in the room, give yourself permission to ask questions. Be absolutely curious always. So, if I was sitting in a room and I'd go, oh, so I just finished this unit at university and it said best practice was A, B, C, but we're not even talking about that. We're going down a completely different path. Then, help me understand. Then that would lead to a conversation, and I could blend that experience with the learnings to go away and apply it to that next piece of work that I'm doing. Right here, university is about equipping you with critical thinking and some theoretical knowledge, usually based out of experience, to help you navigate forward. There's unless you're a doctor, where there's some really clear things that you can't experiment with. But even if you think of a doctor, yes, they're taught very precise details around how to cure a patient. But there will be times where that doesn't work for a patient, and they have to apply that critical thinking and the broader knowledge set that they have to come up with a solution in real time.
Mm.
And so I think, again, I come back to this. University is, or to any sort of education is really vital, but you have to blend it with practical experience, because I know lots of amazing, intelligent people,
Mm.
but they couldn't run a company because they have all the theory, but they've got none of the
The
experience to
practical
understand how to apply
experience,
it.
yeah, is lacking. I think that I came into a very interesting conversation with a very well-known consultant, and they say that he say that in countries that is well developed, organized, the people that need theory, so that they do the application themselves. So they have all the theory first, and then they can try to work around the theory to make it what is practical. And then in certain countries, like my country, people would like to have more practical experience, something that can be used right away, can be applied right away. But there's a side effect for that, because if everything is made available, then the way of your articulate and grow the thinking will not be working well. So balancing between the theory and the practical will be something that as the it will be as the best benefit for everybody, and then you decide which one will be the one that you choose for organizations, for the for the community, and even for the nation itself. So thanks for bringing this up, Jason.
No, it's my pleasure. I think most people would go, in a perfect world, we would study,
Mm.
we'd graduate, then you would get our first job, and many of us realize then that we studied the wrong thing. But we get our first job, and then we get our training wheels, start doing stuff, and very quickly, in my experiences employing people who have finished high school, gone on to university, got their degree, and then got their first job, in my experience, those individuals have a very long ramp up time to a level of productivity that I actually need. Because, during university, it's okay, well, you build out if you're going to design a new product, you build out a project plan, and then you do research, and there's all these steps that you learn, and those steps in and of themselves can be quite valuable. But the speed at which business moves at sometimes means you have to go, well, actually, out of these 52 steps, the most important step to do is number 36. And I'm comfortable that if I do number 36, I'll be able to give my boss or the project the information that it needs to move forward. And that's the piece that you miss out on by just doing theory all the time, right? Is understanding that no idea is amazing unless it actually is delivered on. And sometimes that means you just have to get started and don't do things in sequence.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a beauty in actions, right?
Yeah.
Jason, we're trying to connect in the dot of what makes you who you are today. All right, and there's certain things in the journey that you did that was not we could not connect in the dots. But to me, I think that somehow it's there for the experience that you gain and accumulated. And then I'll show you why we ask this question. When I look at your career in early 2000, you working as a people development service in the HR industry, and you moved to another company and working in procurement. Was I correct? And then go into
Yeah.
sales. And then during after those experiences that accumulative, then you really fast forward onto the consumer experience, then go into the employee consumer and employee experience, then become an expert on that one. So what stops you from pursuing the continual of service and during the university time, and go into the corporate life though, and early times then.
Yeah, so, like I said earlier,
Mm.
every job, regardless of my title, has been focused on that consumer or employee experience. So,
Ah.
I was at Telstra and at Optus. I had various roles in those organizations, some capability development, some people leadership, some department-wide leadership, right? And then I left that and went to the New South Wales Department of Services and Administration, Finance Services and Administration, and I was the Director of Procurement Transformation. Now, I'm sure people listening to this going, hang on, he's the multi-year global guru on customer experience, best-selling author on customer and employee experience, and he went to procurement. But the thing that you need to remember is it was the Director of Procurement Transformation. So historically, government procurement was about how can I get that hospital bed, or how can I get that mobile phone or that litre of diesel for the lowest possible price. My job was actually to say, what is the end goal, to change the procurement process so that we had the end in mind. So if I take the hospital bed example, originally, what was the cheapest I could buy the hospital bed for, as opposed to thinking, what is the experience going to be like for the person in this hospital bed? Is that experience going to lead to potentially other issues, like bed sores or other issues? So instead of doing a procurement exercise purely based on price, I led the transformation efforts to change the procurement thinking to be, what is the consumer? What is the end user experience? What is the side impacts of just thinking about price? So yes, I had a title that means nothing from a customer and employee experience point of view, but we had to completely re-engineer the employee experience within the department because we were changing the way they were working, we were from paper systems to IT systems to the way they think, making a recommendation to buy something that was $5 per unit more expensive than perhaps the cheapest one was counterintuitive, but it was actually the better use of the people's money because there was a lower failure rate, there was shorter terms in shorter patient times in hospital. What are all the other benefits? So we had to think about that employee experience and take them on a journey to help them understand that there was more than just price to consider in procurement. And then in the process of doing that, I had to educate the marketplace around why we're not just going to measure you on price. Now, did price still matter? Of course it did. But it was about what is that holistic way. So the consumer, the employee experience was absolutely at the heart of the work that we're doing. Do we buy system A or do we buy system B? Well, system B was going to be easier for the employee to deliver on the mission overall. So that's where you make those, where I made those decisions. And then, after that, I went into media. I was the senior commercial manager for Fairfax, and I had the unwanted task of having to let quite a number of people that go from the organisation. I had to rip $90 million of cost out of that business, and you can only do that by making some big changes. And we moved customer service and sales functions to countries like New Zealand, the Philippines, to the US, in fact. And on one part, yes, I let go of a lot of long-term team members, but there were some real commercial realities around why we had to do that. And at the same time, build new ways of working that led to a better outcome for consumers. So, senior commercial manager, but again, very focused on the employee experience and the consumer experience. Talking about employee experience, I can remember that very early on there was a major weather event in the Philippines, and people's houses were flooded and what have you. We provided a whole range of support services to the employees to just help get them back up on their feet. And here I am, the senior commercial manager, and I'm signing off on rice cookers and bedding and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because that was the right thing to do for the employee, and it also showed how much we cared for them. So I absolutely believe that if you are focused on your customer and your employee experience, that it doesn't matter what job you're in, you will be successful in that job by having them at the heart of the decisions that you make. It doesn't mean you get every decision right. It doesn't mean that you don't make tough decisions, but whether you're the chief financial officer or the chief customer officer or the head of procurement, you can and should put the consumer and the employee at the heart of the decisions you're making.
This early morning, midnight my time, I talked to Blaine Bartlett. I'm not sure if you know him, so he's from Seattle and he's well known in the consulting business. And then the one thing that he said and resonate to what you tell me, and I would like to quote it, is that he said that the purpose of doing business is to uplift the experience with the existing. So it means that right here, exactly what you say, the experience of the employees having, the experience customers having, and if you do it well, then your business will continue build loyalty on the run, and then the money part will come. It's not doing the business because of the money part first. So thank you for doing that, which leads me to the next questions. Okay, because back then when you do all of that, the term consumer experience, and I don't think that exists 10 15 years ago, so it's pretty new. And then also the terms for employees experience also new and newly introduced to the market, because I'm in the market for human resource for about 12 years already, and 13 years already, and the EX terms now is start to used by corporation in the past 5 or 6 years, and I think it's still in early stage. We did a lot of activities that contribute to a good employee experience, but not the whole spectrum of the employee experience. As the big picture, right? So, what resonates you to do those two amazing pieces together at the very earliest,
Yeah,
age?
I to this day am one of the few authors that have talked about customer employee experience together. You can probably find 100 speakers that will say, well, if you want to deliver a great customer experience, you first have to look after your employees. And then that would be the end of the conversation. And it always just seemed counterintuitive to me. Why would you spend all this money and time building systems and ways of working that were designed around the customer, but didn't take into account the employee? You want your employee to be able to get a step outside of the computer screen, step outside the script, and be empowered to do the right thing by customers. Now, they're not going to do that if they themselves are not having a good experience. You say to someone, you answer the call, you've got steps 1 through 300 to do, and you'll get a gold star if you do steps 1 through 300 in sequential order, right? How can the customer actually listen? How can the employee actually listen to the customer when all they're thinking about is, right, that's step 30. Now step 31, right, I've got to press this button here, and now I need to read this script. We thought, myself included, we thought at a point in time that the best thing to do was to engineer every step of the customer journey. And as long as the employee followed it, it'd be a great outcome. And what did we find? We found that didn't always work because employees themselves weren't having a good experience. They were so caught up in trying to follow the steps that even those that were great still got it wrong from time to time. And so when I took a step back and was looking at what was happening in the different teams that I was leading, it's like, well, the obvious thing here is that we've forgotten about the people delivering the experience. We've spent all this money trying to create the wonderful experience for consumers and just made misery for our employees. And so, co-create the solution with your employees, have the employee in mind when you're doing something, and deliver on your promise to them. In my book, I talk about defining your promise.
Defining the what?
Defining your promise. So define your promise to your customer and your promise to your employee, and then deliver on it and guide every decision by it. If you want to be the Ritz-Carlton, they're a great example of this. They employ ladies and gentlemen to serve ladies and gentlemen, and then they articulate what they mean by that. What does it mean to be a lady and gentleman of the Ritz-Carlton? And what behaviors does that look like? They go really granular. And then from a guest experience point of view, they not only define what the guest can expect to experience, but the behavior that they expect from the guest. If you're a guest at the Ritz-Carlton and you start being abusive to one of the team members there, you will be asked to leave, and rightfully so, because it's ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, not ladies and gentlemen serving rude, arrogant people, right? So, the Johnson and Johnson, as a corporation, also have a thing they call the Credo, and they again define what it is that they do, why they exist, and how that plays out for the consumer, but also how it plays out for the employee. So when you define what it is that you promise, it's easy then to use that as a lens to put all your decisions through and to measure your success. Because otherwise, what are you measuring against? If you don't know where the destination is, how do you know that you got there and how well you got there, right? So define those promises to customer and to employee, and then work hard at delivering them. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to work hard at delivering them. And that also means that you attract a certain person, whether it be a certain employee or a certain customer. Again, JetBlue is a low-cost carrier in the United States. An airline I absolutely love, but it's a very different experience, and their promise is very different to, say, Delta First Class. Now, I love both the products, but I love them for different reasons, and the promise is different in both cases, and the price point is different. But the employee experience is, potentially, based on what I've read at least, the employee experience at JetBlue is better than the employee experience at Delta. Now, that's a decision that people have taken, either consciously or unconsciously, right? But when you're attracting an employee, if they know what you're promising to deliver and you're known for that, well, then you're going to continue to attract talent and retain talent. So, it's just, I always encourage people, leaders, to step back from their organization, speak to people, and try and just observe where are those friction points, because those friction points are what's leading to failure ultimately.
Help me to understand this, Jason, because I always believe that growth is coming from within. When the within is happy, is good, then we can always, deliver the best to the outside. So like you say, if we keep doing organization back then, keep doing, a lot for customer experience, but forgetting to do the employee experience, so the two's not click, and then we create a gap between the expectation of the customer and the happiness level for the employees, right? And then now. You say that that's defining promise, Jason, right? And then
Yes.
defining promise is intangible. It's something that I say, okay, I will do this, I will do that, so we can see, we can hear it. But measurement is something. It's not like 1 or 2 or 3 that we can calculate, we can weigh, we can measure. And promise on the experience, which is another thing, is not measurable also, because the level of happiness, this may be my level of happiness, but this is maybe your level of happiness. So those are the gap between the two. How can leaders synchronize it into a way that measure, this is the promise that we make to employees, and this is how we measure it in a way that everybody can follow and sustain it in the same level. Is there a way to do that, Jason?
Look, there is always a way to measure. The first thing that I would say, though, is don't change what you're measuring every second, month, or every year. You need to define a couple of measures that you're going to live with for 2 to 3 years so that you can track progress. The second thing that you need to do is make sure everyone understands why you're using that measurement and what it is actually measuring. I would argue, there is no measure out there that measures everything. And there's definitely some that are more encapsulating than others, but not necessarily one that does it all. And then the third is about measuring what matters to the organization as a whole. You're never going to please all of the people all of the time. And it's a fool's errand if you think you're going to do that, right? But let's just say that your promise is that you're going to be the best place to work. It's a bit of a promise, right? So the first thing I would do is you need to get a little bit more definition around what you mean by best place to work. But within that, you might go, okay, so to be the best place to work, there's two things that matter to us. We want to give our team members a effortless experience, and we want to be a place that they would recommend to their friends and family as a place people should work. So what would we measure there? Well, we would use employee net promoter score. We'd ask the question once a year, twice a year at most, based on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to your friends or family as a place to work? And the very next question you ask is why? Okay? Because in the why is all the gold. In the why is the rivers of gold that will tell you what's working and what's not working in the company. The second question that you would ask, or the second measure, would be employee effort score. Employee effort score. So on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being extremely difficult and 5 being extremely easy, how easy is it for you to complete your task? How easy is it for you to achieve your job objectives? And then they'll give you a score of 0 to 5. And then the question you ask immediately after that score is why? So here I have two scores, employee net promoter score, employee effort score, and a whole pile of verbatim data that tells me what they love and hate about the organization, and what makes their job easy and what makes it difficult. And then your job on this goal of being the best place to work, that is a place that people want to recommend that others work, and a place that is easy or effortless for them to achieve success, then my job, once I have that information, is not to care about the actual number. If your employee net promoter score is 70 and your employee effort score is 30, that doesn't matter. What matters, at least initially, is what are you doing with the why? Now, what are those 2 to 3 themes that come through consistently? So if in effort, it comes through that IT systems are difficult. The email system is always crashing, or there will be themes that will come through. You don't need to fix all of them, but if you go, hang on, there's 2 or 3 here that actually cause 70% of our employees problems, and you go and fix it, all of a sudden you've done 2 things. You've made your team members more efficient and effective, but you've also demonstrated that you're committed to the promise of being the best place to work. And demonstration of that commitment to the promise builds loyalty. It's the reason why employees will stretch that little bit more when they need to. It's the reason why they'll forgive you and let you try again when something doesn't go right. And then that ultimately then flows into, is this the place I want to recommend my friends and colleagues to work at, right? Because if I feel valued, if I feel heard, then I'm more likely to tell people that it's a great place to work. So, you could measure 5 other things, but I would say you'd never get to fixing anything. Just those 2 very simple questions, and then following it up with actions to improve, not everything, but the top nuggets out there, makes all the difference. Now, to go a step further, if we looked at it on the customer side and you said, we want to make sure that every guest felt a warm welcome at our hotel. Let's just say that was a promise a hotel made. Every guest will feel will experience a warm welcome to the hotel. What's a warm welcome? To me, that could be going up and giving you a great big hug, right? And you do not want your customers being hugged by your team members as a general rule. You might think a warm welcome is waving to them from across the floor, right? There's not necessarily a right or wrong in there, but if you say to your employees, every guest must have a warm welcome to our hotel, And here are the three things that we're going to do to achieve that. We are going to acknowledge the customer with the gentle wave when we are more than 12 feet away from the customer. When the customer's within 6 feet, we're going to smile and say, welcome or hello, welcome to this hotel. Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. And the third thing that we're going to do is introduce ourselves and offer to provide assistance. Now, we've got a promise that the customer sees is you will feel like you walked back into home. But the employee gets that next level down that says, here are the 3 steps to success. Do these 3 things, and magic happens. And then the critical step is that the leadership team demonstrates every single day that it applies to them as much as it applies to the janitor.
Totally.
And so, and then when you want to measure that, you're not asking the customer, did they wave to you with a friendly smile? You're not asking that question, right? But you know that if they don't do those 3 steps, that the customer is going to feel warm and they're going to feel welcomed and they're going to be having an enjoyable experience along with the promise. So, define the promise, that high-level statement, give some really clear actions around what you mean by it. I'd say 3 to 5 max. You don't want more than 5, people will forget them. You don't want plaster it across the walls, that's not going to work. 3 to 5, people can remember. Really simple, intuitive steps that don't require a lot of training, but when delivered is really remarkable.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We are in the country in Vietnam where there's a lot of, there's a lot of slogan, there's a lot of things to do, and sometimes, there's a sayings a lot more than the doings. And so break it to simple steps and then demonstrate that you're really serious about that. You have the people to do what we're supposed to be doing toward the promise that we're making, and the continuous observation and demonstration we make that cultures to happen. That's what I noted down here from what you're saying. So I will share that with our community in the post. Then, why did you ended up writing a book? What caused you to write that book? What caused you?
It's all about CEX. Yeah. The reality is that it doesn't matter how many stages that I have the pleasure of standing on and delivering a speech, how many interviews that I do like this, that my ability to reach and help people have success in their endeavors is limited. And I really want to provide the biggest impact, the ability to support people as much as I possibly can to improve their practice, to improve their businesses. And so I felt that one of the ways I could do that was by writing the book. I have a new book coming out in the next few months, but that I'm in the final stages of writing. But this very first book was about just providing people with really practical advice to get started. And as a practitioner in this space, yes, there's loads of books out there, on customer, load of books on employee. None brought those 2 concepts together like I hope that I have. And I wanted to give people permission to just get started. You don't need to spend 6 years, 6 months, 12 months developing a strategy. You just need to get started. So the book was about helping people get started, giving them permission to just get really practical and action focused, and creating a compelling need within them to get moving. And if your boss doesn't agree with you, share the book with them. If your employee doesn't agree with you, share the book with them. But get going. Our job as leaders is to enrich the lives of those that we serve. Our customers, our employees, our shareholders, our suppliers, the people that we serve. And in my small way, I felt that the book would help more people to be able to do that.
How long it takes you to write this book and publish it?
Oh, well, quite some time. So probably about 2 years in total. The new book is is about 3 years of work.
Oh.
Um, the the writing process is unique to every author, and now when I say 2 years, that wasn't 2 years stuck in a cupboard, not talking to anyone, just writing the book, right? But
Mm.
you just it's an iterative process. For me at least, I'd write some stuff, I'd review it, I would critically think about it, probably overthink it at times. But I wanted to really make sure that it was something that would resonate with the reader. And I share my journey from when I was 14 and
Mm.
right through to the position I had when I wrote the book. So, part of that permission, giving people permission to be wherever they're at and be okay with that, is about sharing that journey. So, it's a book of passion. It's a book that took longer than perhaps it needed to, but I really wanted to make sure I got it right. And the new book goes even further on that. So the new book is certainly going to reach a wider audience, but ultimately bring them back to this notion that experience and the experiences that we
Mm.
deliver is what drives the business forward.
Since you talk about the new book already, would you be able to share a little bit more about that, what it is about, and when did you plan to publish it?
Yeah, so the publish date's probably late November of this year. Possibility I might hold it over till January, February, but yeah, at this stage, late November. The book is focused on experience management as the new frontier for business. And so I explore not only customer and employee experience, but things like product experience and other elements that all come together to impact the customer or the employee. So, I still fundamentally believe that the two biggest pillars of experience management are our customer and employee experience. But, talk to someone in finance and they probably never talk to a customer, right? So
Mm.
this book is really about experience management being the way an organization operates, the lens through which every department operates.
Mm.
And, if you're talking to your product team, how do you talk to them about experience without them, eyes glazing over? So,
Mm.
the book balances theory with practical actions to help people move forward. So, I share experiences about programs that I've led and delivered, and then create the business case for people to focus on this, and then give some really clear steps to move forward.
Wow.
There's also some fantastic interviews with some really phenomenal business leaders and experience management professionals, whether it be customer experience or employee experience professionals, within the book as well. So yeah, a really solid piece of work that I can't wait to share the title. I can't share it just yet for
Mm.
copyright reasons, but can't wait to share it with audiences around the world.
Wow. I'm so excited about that. I would definitely looking forward to read that because I believe that, it will lead us to the next level in depth of experiences that, as a business whole landscape, as a business leaders need to, really take a look at the whole journeys of everything, right? Not just the customer, not just the employees, but how everything's impacting for the business. So Jason, I admire all the things you do. Again, I really want to say that. I really appreciate that you spending your time coming this morning to share your stories and the amazing things that you've been doing. And we really appreciate it. There's a lot of things for us to learn today, to relearn and and unlearn and relearn what we're doing. So there's no need to do a lengthy preparations or anything. Pick something and pick things that we can change now. We can start to implement now and start doing. And by the doings, then we can always fine tune. We can always change, and then we can always create a new experience. Given the past that maybe we had, some negative ones, but then we can always change the way forward. So thank you very much for sharing that. I uh, I wish you and your family all the best, and I wish you all the success with the things that you do. All right, and then permit me to connect you back in November so that we can talk about the new book, and by then hopefully that there's something that you can share and we can promote it together. All right.
That'd be great. Before we go, Noha, if I could just share one thing with your audience, one last thing
Please.
perhaps, and it's this statement. The experiences that you deliver today become the memories that create the stories that either uplift your business or achieve the opposite. Every single time you interact with a customer or employee, you are creating a memory. And that memory can become a story that people share with great vigor and excitement about why their friends and family, why they themselves should come back and do business with you, or they become the stories of why you shouldn't do business with an organization. So remember, every single opportunity, every single transaction, I should say, is an opportunity to create a new memory, a memory that leads to loyalty, repeat, and referral business.
Yep. Thank you so much for that closing statement. Definitely, we love to serve and we love to make the memories good for everybody around us. So and there's a lot of things for us to change the way we do. Thank you so much for demonstrating the leading that change. Okay.
Thanks so much. Great being with you today.
Great being with you too. Bye bye. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye bye.